So I'm pleased to welcome Nathalie, who is the author of the Webs of Influence book. I have a copy here. I'd like to thank you for joining Quick Ed Courses today, Nathalie. I've prepared a couple of questions for you, nothing too taxing, hopefully, and it sort of builds on some of the content from your book. The first question being, many online businesses use tracking cookies for remarketing. Is this a strategy that you would recommend given privacy concerns?
That's such a good question. Well, it depends on where you're located. So obviously, if you're in the EU, it's going to be easier to... Actually, no, let me take that again, because actually it's harder in the EU. And now with the different regs of the GDPR, it's going to make certain types of tracking more complicated. I think generally speaking, there is a greater awareness of what cookies do and how they work. If you use DuckDuckGo, which I do, they actually give you, it's an alternate search engine to Google. They actually give you a certification in the top of the navigation to show you how well or poorly a particular site is rated according to how much they're demanding of information from you. So I think people are more aware of it. There's more of a public discourse around what this does. I think, sadly, from the perspective of privacy, most of us still are suckers for convenience and ease. And so given that we tend to try to do that which is easiest, and cookies facilitate a lot of much more sort of streamlined user experiences, so you don't have to put your form field each time you go to a website because it remembers who you are from the last time. I think most of us would have a bit of a struggle on our hands in terms of what we give up in order to obtain greater privacy. So it's always that balance. How much data do I want to give up? How much privacy do I need? How much do I trust this brand? And generally convenience trumps all. It's quite a long answer.
It is, yeah, it is. And I think you mentioned a good point actually with how much you trust the brand, because obviously I think we've all noticed we go to a website and then when we go on YouTube or Facebook, we end up seeing adverts of that from that website, that company. And if it's Amazon, we probably don't make much notice, but when it's a company that you don't really know and you're not familiar with, you're like, hang on, how did you manage to put your advert after I've just been to your website? So it's a good remarketing tool, but when it comes to trust, and would you buy from a company that you feel like they're invading your privacy? So it's quite a weird topic, isn't it? It's this bit of a conundrum for marketers.
Yeah, and I think it's about the appropriateness of the remarketing. So for instance, if it's a brand that you know and love and you've been searching for something for a while and you've already got an established connection, you don't mind if they reach back out. It's like relationships between people. If you've got an acquaintance that you really like, you've met a few times and they send you a couple of texts, it's not going to seem weird. If it's a complete stranger who starts cyber stalking you, you're going to have other reactions. And it's a similar thing with brands. It's
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Question number 2 is about pop-ups actually.
Yeah.
Many websites use exit pop-ups, and in your book you have quite a mixed view on them. You say that they can increase conversions if used well. What tips would you give small business owners and website owners with regards to exit pop-ups?
So there's a couple of things. I think if you've got someone who's browsing through your site, you only want to have exit pop-ups on certain pages because it interrupts the user journey. So if you're trying to attract new clients and you've got them on your landing page, then it makes sense to have an exit pop-up for new users, which speaks back to the cookies conversation that we just had.
Exactly.
So if you know that it's a new user and they're likely to exit your landing page unless you give them something to incentivize them to stay, then an exit pop-up is quite useful. You can offer them a reward. You can get them, I don't know, 10% discount or something like this. The only problem is, well, 2 problems. One is if someone's using a tracker blocker, which I use Ghostery, they're brilliant. And then they can't actually tell that you've been there before. The second is if you're using an exit pop-up throughout your site. And so then if you're getting someone to a point where they're doing some research, you don't want to keep pinging them the same pop-up because it's just annoying. And the third is if you have the same discount, for instance, over a period of weeks, and you've got people who know that they can get money off by coming in and exiting, you're going to run into problems of people using that again and again. So you might want to be able to figure out when it's appropriate to serve it and when not. So there's got to be a little bit more of a consideration as to the user.
Okay, that's interesting, because I find when I'm using websites, I find them quite annoying, and the reason why is because they obviously detect mouse movement. So when you're about to leave, they pop up, but I trigger them when I'm navigating the page. So I'm not ready to leave, and I'm having to close the pop-up. And I think these are so annoying, but they're used by so many companies, so they must work. So it's quite interesting.
It's kind of like the overall stats. If you get, I don't know, a 10% lift in conversions, is it worth it to piss off a segment of people who are just getting it all the time? Maybe it is. I don't know.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. And the final question I've got is, are there any on-page features that you would recommend online businesses put on their website to encourage users to trust the website? And I know in your book you mention a phrase, "We guarantee 100% privacy, your information will not be shared." And I've used that on a website myself and found that it worked quite well. Is there any other tips that you have to build trust?
I think so. Trust is something that I'm researching at the moment for this new book that I'm working on. It's really closely related to authenticity. And this is a word that gets used so much without really understanding what it means. So it's about being consistent in your values and expression of those values over time. And so if you can show that you are able to express values of integrity over time in the language that you use, maybe in testimonials of clients that have been with you for a long time, showing a historic reliability, that also is going to show that people can trust on you to deliver what you say you're going to deliver. Excuse me. So there has to be not just these kind of indications of protecting the user's privacy and being reliable in terms of the goods that you're going to give, but there also needs to be more of a narrative sense of authenticity and reliability. So can we relate to this brand over time? Will they actually do what they say they're going to do? Is this someone that I'd want to, come back to and do business with? So creating the space for testimonials and stories that speak to that longer term reliability and authenticity will also help build trust.
Okay, that's interesting. I think that the students will find that very useful, the tips that you've given. So you mentioned that you're working on a new book, which is quite exciting, because I've read Webs of Influence once and I've gone over certain sections again, because there's so many bits of information in there. So tell us a little bit about the new book.
Sure.
So
this is, sorry, my love.
I will be buying it.
Awesome, thank you. Well, hopefully I'll finish writing it within the allocated time slot. So the book is about evolving consumer behaviors, and with, obviously at the moment we're still in the sort of midst of uncertainty and the pandemic looming over us, but it looks at the way in which behaviors have changed very rapidly in a short amount of time based on previous trends that we were already seeing. So it's been an acceleration of some of these behaviors. So looking at values, how values have shifted, looking at perceived brand authenticity, what that means, how to build trust, what to do when shit goes wrong and you have to engage in apology and recovery strategies, looking at things like virtue signaling. So if you talk a big game, but then you're unable to put your money where your mouth is as a brand, what does it mean in terms of the kickback you're going to get, and how do you resolve some of these inconsistencies? So basically it's about business and brand resilience, understanding where consumer trends and behaviors and expectations are going, and then furnishing people with the insights and examples that they can then use to create a more resilient business as uncertainty continues and as we build towards the future. And to kind of give people hopefully a sense of excitement and optimism that we can do something differently, that this is the perfect opportunity to start to build new. Yeah.
Okay, sounds interesting. Sounds really good. And I understand you have a podcast as well.
Yeah. So the podcast is a little bit different. It's called The Hive Podcast. It's on iTunes and Spotify. And it looks at the intersection between sort of more human capacities, art, sciences, etc., technology, and the rich and living environment. So we look at everything from, let's say, psychedelics and the mythic imagination to biophilic design, behavioral economics, sustainability. It kind of looks at a very broad, rich mix of many of the challenges and opportunities that we're facing right now.
Oh, okay, brilliant. Okay, well, students should check that out. A preliminary date for your new book release?
It will most likely be coming out in September of next year, so September 2021. But I will keep you posted.
Excellent. That sounds great. I appreciate your time, Nathalie, and enjoy the rest of your day. All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.